Penno recently held a campaign kickoff event at Castle Royale. However, several weeks ago, a local attorney filed a lawsuit against the city shortly after the Yonkers City Council voted to extend the term limits from 3 to 4 terms. Michael Sussman filed the case. He says he has support from the Yonkers NAACP chapter, former City Councilwoman Joan Gronowski, and former television host Joe Pinion III. Also eligible for a fourth term would be City Councilman Michael Breen, who was among the 4 council members who voted for the extension. A massive traffic alert as work begins this week in a bridge replacement project in New Rochelle. The New York State Thruway Authority announcing the work has begun on the nearly $52 million 3-year project to replace the North Adams Bridge off the section of the New England.
I'm definitely going to be following up with you, and I thank you so much.
And also provide a dedicated left turn lane on Route 3 onto Garden Street. Bridge will stay open during construction, but expect delays because of land restrictions.
You're
A new group box in New Rochelle. Group boxing is open in the city on January 26th at 77 Quaker Ridge Road. They'll offer the local community exclusive membership specials. Buy one class, get one free special. You're up to date, Jared Swallow.
I'm Ray, a professional animator. Unfortunately, I'm one of nearly 800,000.
Well, we're going to help you make it great, but are you available to talk again later this evening? I just want to follow up with you and give you a little bit more time than I got right now. If you got a few more minutes later this evening.
My life. Fortunate.
Well, we could put on the phone too, just to make it all one big happy family.
GNT to deliver the most advanced stroke care available.
Okay.
Thanks to the incredible care.
All right, we're counting on you still. Thank you.
Nurses and staff.
They're finishing a commercial.
Yeah.
Working on my next school application. Thanks, my daughter. Incredible. For information on reducing stroke risk and to learn more about my incredible story, go to wmchealth.org/stroke recovery. It's wmchealth.org/stroke recovery.
Westchester Medical Center Health Network, advancing care here.
And now with your latest up-to-date forecast, here's forecast series Eye on Weather on 1460 WVOX.
Forecast Westchester County and the vicinity for today was partly sunny, breezy conditions. It will be mild once again, highs will climb into the low to middle 50s. Partly cloudy weather this evening, overnight lows falling back to the lower 30s. Rain will develop on Thursday, temperatures heading into the lower 40s through the afternoon, periods of rain at night into the upper 30s. 50% chance of morning showers on Friday, the mostly cloudy in the afternoon, highs upper 40s, partly sunny on Saturday, lower 40s. Cloudy skies, more rain on Sunday. Seatbelt area to reporting 1460 WVOX, the Whitney Global Media Station.
Thank you for joining us on 1460 WVOX, America's great community radio station where many different voices are heard in the land. Opinions expressed on our community open line programs are not necessarily those of the station, its management, or sponsors. As always, we're privileged to amplify the voice of the people here on Vox Populi 1460 and worldwide at WVOX.com for you and yours.
Broadcasting live from Studio One, high atop the WVOX tower. This is America's great community radio station, 1460 WVOX.
1460 WVOX. Stay tuned now for What Happened Here with Rich Thomas. Rich Thomas is the former mayor of Mount Vernon. Now, What Happened Here with Rich Thomas on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to WVOX, the Whitney Global Media Station, and you're listening to What Happened Here, where every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. we ask a question, what happened here? And this week's topic and our special guest is co-host Charles Knapp, former assistant United States attorney for the Eastern District, former assistant Manhattan District Attorney, and also former City of Mount Vernon Inspector General. We're going to be talking about a variety of issues that we know that are important to you, especially the people in Mount Vernon, from the budget situation in Mount Vernon, the high tax issues that are going on, the animal shelter. We got some bombshell news that came out revealing some documents from the state of New York that we're going to discuss. We'll hear some clips from a local taxpayer that analyzed the situation, and also we'll touch upon some national issues. We know that the situation with George Santos, and also the situation in Washington, be it the documents that are going back and forth between the White House and the Congress of interest to kind of dive into. So nonetheless, if you want to tap in and call in and discuss any of these issues or some things that we didn't even mention, phone number is 914-636-0110. Again, it's 914-636-0110. Charlie, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure, Mayor.
And, before, back in December, we were surprised with the sudden announcement that the Mount Vernon Animal Shelter was going to shut down. And we were also surprised by a budget that was somewhat just thrown out there. Second week of December was thrown out there that the administration in Mount Vernon wants to raise taxes 8%. And then they just kind of rammed it through along with shutting down the animal shelter on a Friday before Christmas. And then a few weeks after that, they shut down two major bridges without warning and without notice. So just want to back up and kind of catch everyone up. Is it common for municipalities to kind of have such a dramatic increase in taxes and then a dramatic reduction in services? And I ask only because it seems that that's not only the pattern, but that's the practice of Mount Vernon today under this administration. And there seems to be no real process of relief in sight.
Well, what you pointed out shows the continuing dysfunction of the city government in Mount Vernon because absent some catastrophe, hurricane, or flooding or something like that, no, there shouldn't be sudden shortfalls in revenue. There shouldn't be sudden large increases in taxes. There shouldn't be such cutbacks that uh, you don't even know how much money is being supposedly saved. You don't understand the run up to why it was necessary in the case of the animal shelter to shut it down, why bridges all of a sudden are being shut down with no notice. That's all on the government. The government is not working the way a normal government should.
And this is some of the things that trouble me. It's like government is not necessarily new. Government in Mount Vernon was founded. The city of Mount Vernon was founded in 1892. The village of Mount Vernon was formed in 1851. So this is not a new thing. And this is where I get kind of really frustrated because in an era of smartphones and devices, access to so much information, we just cannot seem to communicate. We cannot um, seem to get a fair opportunity to either look at information from City Hall, receive information from City Hall, and get a straight answer. And I'll give an example before I ask Gerald to play one of the clips. The state of New York did an inspection on the bridges that were shut down in Mount Vernon. They warned the administration of the deterioration and their need to take action. The state of New York also warned the administration about the rodent infestation at the animal shelter and told them to fix it before it got worse. But instead, the administration, under Patterson Howard, decided that they were going to ignore the rodent infestation that ruined the Mount Vernon Animal Shelter, and they were going to ignore the repairs to the bridges that needed to be made. So I don't understand what are we missing, especially since they got 42 million in biting bucks.
Well, one of the other issues that I noticed was the warden and assistant warden who knew how to run the animal shelter have not been around, and apparently a random, I don't mean to disparage her because I'm sure she was doing the best she could, but a random police officer was put in charge for months of the shelter, and that needs explaining why you couldn't have the appropriate staff there to take care of things. But before you get to the clips, just by way of background, part of the issue is the information is out there, but this administration is basically putting the onus on the individual citizen to go find it. And this particular person went and found it. He filed a Freedom of Information law request to get the information that you'll be playing the clips on from the State Department of Agriculture and Markets. So it's another example of a citizen empowering himself and part and parcel with that, and maybe we'll get to this when we speak about George Santos, but the critical importance of local journalism, which is functionally non-existent in Westchester County. There are a couple, but they need to separate themselves from the political power structure and serve the people by investigating both sides in an even-handed manner.
So, Gerald, can you play clip one?
Why rodents took up residency in the shelter, and rather than fixing it, the city let it go. So for the mayor to say, mention the word ventilation in her press conference, but not mention the overwhelming stench from rodent feces, it seems to me like it's terribly disingenuous, right? It's just wrong to try and manipulate public perception that way.
And that was Chris McDonough. He runs MountVernonCitizen.org. Highly encourage Mount Vernon residents or even neighboring communities to take a look at MountVernonCitizen.org. And he basically unpacked the facts. He said, look, I'm going to take you at your word. I'm going to listen to what you have to say. He attended some of the mayor's town hall meetings and he asked the questions. And after the actions of the administration proved to be not match their words, he went and asked the state of New York for the facts. And he's reading from about 60 pages of inspection reports by the New York State Department of Agriculture going back 10 years to show the behavior and history of the animal shelter. And nothing over the past decade suggested that there was a structural issue. So he, as you'll hear in one of the next clips, going to ask you to play clip number 2, and then we'll pause there and then get ready for the break. But I just want you all to know that this is a dispassionate look at the facts.
By this administration, there's no way that you can get around that. Rodent infestation in September of 2022 is not the result of problems at the shelter a decade earlier. Maybe, it was a little long in the tooth, sort of a little leaky here and there were intermittent problems with heat and hot water. It was not cited to be structurally unsound until they didn't fix it. So this was a decision on the mayor's part to let this go. Let it go into such disrepair that there was no choice in the matter. We have to close it down.
So that's where we are, and that's part of the reason why there's been so much energy, emotion, and tension around the Mount Vernon Animal Shelter because this situation was totally avoidable, and it goes to show the choices that people make. And when you look at the choices that have been made, and you look at the choice of a higher tax increase, an 8% proposal by City Hall, that found a 30% effective tax rate from last year when they introduced a sustainability fee, the sanitation fee, the garbage tax, the water tax, the sewer tax. They introduced new fees. But meanwhile, salaries in City Hall they jumped up, crime jumped up, but as you can see, services have been shut down from the animal shelter to the bridges to the senior center, the kitchen, and the list goes on. So this is where the community is starting to really thankfully question what's going on. What happened here with Mount Vernon? Why is it so dysfunctional? Do you have any thoughts on that, Charlie?
Well, again, if you don't, well, let me wait till after the break.
Well,
collect my thoughts.
This is Fox Business.
We'll see you guys. We'll pick it up a little bit after the break.
Missed estimates. They rose by 5.3% during November.
Like that old kids game time bomb.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Minister Tyson, how you doing?
The National Retail Federation.
I gotta come on your show, Minister. Gotta get a power prayer from you and your listeners. So we gotta get that done.
Is a vaccine, and in a late-stage trial, it's 84% effective in older Americans, and now they intend to submit this for full by June. It's the expectation. COVID vaccines, mRNA technologies, people skittish that market has dried up. This is using that
But
technology.
yeah, the George Santos thing is the gift that just keeps on giving. I mean, like,
That's your
what is up with him?
It's the flip side of Trump and the documents, and now Biden's document.
Yeah, it's all a big mess.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's something that I definitely want to, maybe when we come back and break, we can talk about Nephi politics. And
We'll finish with,
okay,
yes.
you keep it for right.
Yeah.
I'll tease it like later in the show toward the end. I'll talk about my vision for new politics in Mount Vernon, but also that can filter out for more national impact, and I think that that's something that we need right now. And I'll keep that. But yeah, this is it's wild, like absolutely wild.
For Crestwood.
But yeah, it's easier, I think, to play the clips as well.
Yeah.
It's just
It's doing nicely.
And now back to what happened here. Where's Rich Thomas, the former mayor of Mount Vernon, on 1460 WVOX.
welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to WVOX at Whitney Global Media Station, and we're here every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. asking the question on the show, what happened here? What happened here with, and today's topics are taxes, budget, Mount Vernon Animal Shelter. And we're going to touch upon some national issues, mainly George Santos, the Biden documents. I know, Vince, if you're out there listening, we got to talk about the Biden documents. Eager to hear and have a conversation about that. But we'll also get to later in the show a vision for politics that I believe can work not just locally, but also on a national level. So we'll talk about that later in the show. But for now, we want to pick back up. The question was asked, the cliffhanger. What happened with Mount Vernon? How come it's so dysfunctional? This is not something new. This is just seems to be more drama on top of drama.
Well, everything is a long time brewing, and part of it is if you let the citizenry disengaged from politics, then the politicians get to do what they want, they get to say what they want, and inevitably bad things are going to happen. This is supposed to be a democracy. It's not supposed to be a monarchy. And so, by way of example, this fellow who decided to listen to the mayor's,
Addison Howard, Heartless Howard.
her explanation on the animal shelter, he listened to it and he then went to verify what she said. So this is the old President Reagan trust but verify. And what he came up with were documentary evidence showing that she had misled and misrepresented the reasons behind the closing of the animal shelter. He wasn't being disagreeable. He wasn't doing a gotcha thing. What he was doing was educating the public about the truth behind the animal shelter, which of course then leads to, well, if she didn't come out and was upfront about the animal shelter, what other issues might she not be upfront on in the same way? And then in this, I guess it's the old caution of the mayor has her new mantra. She believes in governing, not gaslighting, and that's great. But you better not be the gas company if that's going to be your tagline, because she's in the process of lighting all sorts of matches that are going to wind up blowing things up in her face, and it's all avoidable. All she needs to do is level with the people, and everybody can work together. And that's really what needs to happen. But if you're just going to be as a politician, your primary objective is to get reelected, fundraise, and look for your retirement without helping the people, you probably shouldn't be in politics. But it's up to the voters to let those politicians know who they approve of and who they don't.
And that's where, I'm going to ask Gerald if you could run the next clip, because this one it's 61 seconds and it really says a lot.
The entire shelter has large amounts of rodent waste material and chewed up debris lying around. This makes it hard to clean and sanitize. So housing, equipment sanitary, no. Repairs done as necessary, no. Hogs handled safely, no. Ventilation adequate, no. The foul smell of rodent waste is excessive. Recall that in the press conference, the mayor mentioned ventilation, but she didn't tell us that it had to do with these rodents. Gleason at the 12/14 meeting talked about rodents getting in and noting that it was not safe for the animals anymore. But you would think that this was due to a decade of building decay. It's not. I just showed you those reports, right? It was not. That's not the case at all. This was the result of neglect of that shelter carried out by the current administration.
So that kind of sums up, what we were discussing. That's gaslighting. That's gaslighting the community and not governing. Literally, that's literally telling a false narrative about what happened to public property, but also innocent rescue animals that are voiceless, defenseless. We're the last stop, and we're supposed to be a place where these rescues get help, not hurt. And so, just to kind of parallel that, the seniors, their center was shut down without any notice, without any warning, without any vision or plan to replace the services of the loss of the shelter. The soup kitchen that fed, hundreds of people, also shut down. No vision, no plan, and it's really heartless because not only did Mayor Patterson Howard do the shutdown to the animals, she did it to the seniors. And now the motorists that are supposed to be driving around town, it creates a serious safety issue because the safety net is being, set on fire.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed when she had her most recent town meeting was she said that it was not true that the animal shelter was being shut down. She had never said that before. There's this 1 year agreement with New Rochelle, and she implied that the animal shelter would then be reopened. If you look at her earlier statements and statements from her administration, it was a shutdown. And she, I think having been caught, she did a 180, so it now gives the impression that, well, these problems will be attended to, and you'll have your animal shelter back in a year. I hope I'm wrong, but I could see that there'll be a declaration that the problems with the shelter are too great, too expensive. Not only will it not be reopened, the building needs to be condemned, and will some helpful real estate developer step in and, quote, save the city from this problem? Sure, we'll give you a couple of tax advantages and you build something other than an animal shelter, which will make money for you. I hope that I'm wrong on that. But, the problem is if you say too many things and they turn out not to be backed up by the evidence, uh, then other people can wonder what exactly is the game plan here. So, as I said, I hope I'm wrong on that. But unfortunately, she's opened the door to that kind of thinking.
And that's something that we're going to pick up when we come back from break. You're listening to What Happened Here on WVOX.
Latest update from Fox News Radio on 1450 WX.
We'll do
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. Let's keep a minute of silence before addressing the World Economic Forum in Switzerland for 14 people, including his interior minister, killed in a helicopter crash this morning. Helicopter crash. Kindergarten.
I'm gonna do just two more clips and then we'll wrap this up. I want to
Go to Santos and
Employees. The software maker braces for
it's on those documents. 'Cause I think that's important.
changes,
And
including severance and other restructuring expenses, will cost it $1.2 billion. Alphabet, Amazon, and Salesforce are among the tech companies which have trimmed jobs in recent weeks.
As Lillian Wu in New York, Microsoft cuts add up to nearly 10% of its global workforce. On Wall Street, stocks trading lower today. Americans listening to Fox News.
And now with your latest up-to-date forecast, here's Steve Pelletieri's Eye on Weather on 1460 WVOX.
Forecast Westchester County and the vicinity for today was partly sunny, breezy conditions. It will be mild once again. Highs will climb into the low to middle 50s. Partly cloudy weather this evening, overnight lows falling back to the lower 30s. Rain will develop on Thursday. Temperatures moving steady into the lower 40s through the afternoon. Periods of rain at night into the upper 30s. 30% chance of morning showers on Friday. Mostly cloudy in the afternoon. Highs upper 40s. Partly sunny on Saturday.
combine
Cloudy skies
6 and 7.
Sunday.
I'll tell them to combine flip 6 and 7
Yeah.
because it runs out. Okay. To talk about what you say, gave the administration an excuse, and
1460. Oh,
I guess when you're done, give him another shout out for his website.
Rick Ellis, former mayor of Mount Vernon. 1460
He likes Rick.
WVOX.
welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to WVOX and Whitney Global Media Station. And we're here on Wednesdays from 12 noon to 1 p.m. asking the question, what happened here? And today our special guest and co-host is Charles Knapp, former Assistant United States Attorney in the Eastern District, former Assistant Manhattan District Attorney, also former Mount Vernon Inspector General. And we were talking about the Mount Vernon Animal Shelter, the budget situation, the tax situation in Mount Vernon. And we're going to get to some national issues with President Biden and the documents debacle. But before we go, we have two more clips we just want to play for everybody that relate to the animal shelter. And we want to thank Chris McDonough of Mount Vernon Citizen.org, mountvernoncitizen.org. Take a look at the site, very informative, a lot of information, document driven, which is what we need. I'm going to ask, can you play clip number 5?
5 instead of 4.
Yes, we're going to skip. Yep, number 5. And so you're going to hear about the reports that the administration.
Now, right? September, they noticed the rats there. Now by December, now the building is declared structurally unsound by the inspector. The shelter is not structurally sound due to massive rodent infestation living in walls and destroying, weakening the structure. So based on these reports, this problem falls squarely on the Patterson-Howard administration, not prior administrations.
Now,
Thus far, no improvements have been made in the shelter condition. The animals should be removed to avoid these health hazards.
so and now we're going to go to the next clip and just let it play all the way out because you're going to hear everybody what Charlie was saying about the documents and how it appears to have given the administration an excuse, and it feels like there's something else afoot. But Gerald, run the next clip.
Give the administration the excuse to say we got to close the shelter, right? So police can get up there and say it's not good for the animals. What's left out is that this was their own making. They did this. This was due to operational ineptitude from this administration, not prior administrations.
And you can just let it run out. Go to the next clip.
So there you go. If somebody wants to show how this problem, this rat infestation, is the result of the Thomas administration or the Davis administration or the Flint Young administration, please show me some evidence. My big concerns are keeping the public in the dark. And now the reason why I think they're kept in the dark because they didn't want to own this, right? They want to somehow pass the current administration wants to pass this off as not our fault, another administration's fault. Sorry, I'm not buying it. And no one else should buy this either. And regarding the savings, I don't believe a word that anybody says in writing. Show me in writing. So enjoy your day.
And that sums up the sentiment of Mount Vernon residents, Mount Vernon taxpayers. They want to see the facts. I mean, it's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of um, misgivings. It's been too long for this government of Mount Vernon to be dysfunctional, the streets to be like you're driving on the moon. It's absurd that the taxes are so high, and another budget recommending a tax increase without having anything earmarked or identified to deal with the animal shelter, to deal with the bridges, the sewers, nothing to deal with, you know, Mount Vernon's look, and no plan for reducing the burden, only increasing it. And this is where and why, we have to ask these questions. What happened here? Why is this happening? And what do you take about Chris's perspective, Charlie, about wanting to see the documents, wanting to see more information before he believes in what City Hall says?
Well, he's absolutely right. And the problem is that it's to the government to have given those documents, to give the context, to explain what's going on. What it seems to me is this is part of the pattern by this particular administration, which is that it is never proactive. It's always shocked at being told about things that everybody who doesn't live in a sealed basement is already aware of. And the best example uh, is the 2022 audit by Controller DiNapoli, where he identified things that were apparently a complete surprise to this mayor, even though they were all, without exception, things that you had been yelling about and trying to get the attorney general and the controller's attention back in 2018, 2019, and there were public reports on these precise issues, all ignored. In fact, those reports have been wiped apparently from the Mount Vernon website. It'd be interesting to know who did that and why. But you can't operate a government by being defensive, by waiting for things to explode, and then your first line of argument is, "Gee, this is new. If only I'd known." You have to be out there. You have to be proactive. You have to help the people. You have to run the city effectively and efficiently.
Well, I just want to let everybody know that's watching online. I switched to the audit report that came out in January 2022, and there's a quote from Controller DiNapoli that says, quote, "It is time for city officials to turn the page and overhaul their fiscal operations, period." So I just want to, end that quote for now. But the message is turn the page. So what? $178 million was misappropriated. Oh, who cares that we cannot account for 25 million of your tax dollars? But guess what? It's time to turn the page.
Well, this is from the same controller who blew through $11 billion in COVID-related unemployment insurance, and his big conclusion of something that he was responsible for was, well, I'll do better next time. Let's move on. Money's already out the door. What can I do?
And this is where people need government. And from what I'm seeing, the way the economy is shifting, and the way the climate is changing, the way our lives have been upended by COVID and the continued threat of a new variant or a virus coming to shut down, you know, life as we know it, uh, remains on the march. And this is where I look at Congress and I say, come on, guys, get a grip. I know we all have our different views on the left and the right, but there has to be somewhere where we can agree on a set of priorities that doesn't result in this being a shutdown of the senior center, a shutdown of the soup kitchen, a shutdown of bridges that connect the community, a shutdown of the animal shelter. and an increase in the cost of living without any end or plan in sight. There has to be something else, and so I'm really struggling with the situation because as a taxpayer, as a father, as a son of Mount Vernon, I'm just saying like uh, I recognize why some of my neighbors want to just throw up their hands and leave, but where are we going?
Well, you need to not literally, but metaphorically, fight for what you believe in. And part of it is just like Chris, you have to be curious. I'm being told something. Does that make sense? Is it true? Let me find out. Let me ask questions. Let me follow up. That's what an informed citizenry should be doing. And by the way, there was something else that Chris had mentioned. We didn't play that particular uh, snippet, but uh, the issue was you'd mentioned the $42 million
Yes.
in ARPA, and the mayor's response was, well, we had a poll for the people, and basically the animal shelter, garnered zero interest by the people. Chris looked at the poll. Turned out animal shelter was not among the options that were given. There was, as he said, something called other, but filling in a poll is an annoying thing enough for most people. They're not going to sit down and think about other priorities because, frankly, you have things like infrastructure, all the important things, important in terms of quality of living and immediate impact. Animal shelter, had it been listed, I'm sure, given the pushback now, would have gotten some sort of support because, quite frankly, you don't need millions of dollars to fix the animal shelter problem. You do need millions of dollars to fix the sewers.
Well, let me just say this. If Sean Patterson Howard stopped traveling so much, you could have taken the money from one of her trips to pay for the exterminator to stop the rats. That's it. I mean, it's that easy. One of her trips to, these fancy gatherings she goes to all the time, you could have afforded to pay an exterminator $3,000, $4,000 to, you know, deal with the rodent infestation. And these aren't your regular field mice. These are like sewer rats. And the sad part is they're still there. And nothing has been done to really change that situation. And this is where, why I believe everybody calls her Heartless Howard because you cannot have a heart to allow another living creature to be overrun with rodent feces and sleep at night. And that's why I get so worked up about this, having rescued a few animals from the Mount Vernon Animal Shelter myself. I just know that we can do a lot better than this, and it's a real shame, and it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, the rats have taken over the animal shelter, which raises the question of who's taken over City Hall.
And with that, we're going to have our caller. Caller, thank you for joining. We know you have some views on how to exterminate City Hall. Well, don't go. Don't change that dial because we're going to come back from break. Can you stay with us? All right. We need to talk to you when we come back from break. We're going to talk about a new vision for politics and how we can make our way forward. You listen to what happened here on WVOX and the Global Media Station.
We just said to him what you did to me.
Say again?
You just did to him what happened to me.
Yeah, I know.
Love to hear your thoughts in a minute.
Cliffhanger. Yeah, I was really asking this question the other day when, I was driving back from running an errand in town, and I saw, a family sitting at a bus stop, but it was the only place they could sit because the park behind it had no benches. So I'm like, what is the future for these people that are here, they're paying rent, or Section 8 is paying rent, they're working 2 or 3 jobs,
Yep.
and they go outside to sit at a bus stop to watch their kids behind them play in the park without anybody, seat, no trees at.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what's the future for these people? What's the future for their teenager that's in high school and looking out saying, hey, I'm going to get good grades and I'm going to do something good, but
restructuring.
I'm just thinking like
will
what
cost it 1.2
is being offered to me, and right now it's shut down, shut up.
days, which
Just sit down. Yeah, sit down. That's right.
Yeah, and something that's just cosmetics that could be addressed relatively quickly while you're dealing with deeper structural problems.
Yeah.
But it's priorities.
Hey, Effie, long time no see. How you doing?
Based on their voice and her name.
Are you in Greece, Effie, or where are you now in the world?
to Americans.
Ryan, he says Shannon.
We're talking about saving
Curious
our city,
always after the storm.
and we're talking about how to
Remind people in this town
do something to make a difference.
Forbes says he's already making the show her own. See
I
what
think Effie can breathe. She went to NYU, in church from your undergrad.
So let's get some answers.
The Fox News Podcasts Network.
Well, Greece came back from the dead, governmentally speaking, so maybe she'll have some insight.
Look into the biggest financial crisis since the Great Depression.
And once after the fall, we better dive into the documents.
Yeah. We're gonna do that now. Well, I'll do that. I'll leave with that.
Yeah.
In synchronicity with the voter.
So I'll make sure to parallel that to Chris's analysis. Once you get the documents, you can make a decision. What documents did Biden have? What documents does Trump have? What's the deal?
Westchester.
So I think Vince will like that.
Yeah.
Good mornings from 69. You're on 1360. Relax.
And now back to What Happened Here with Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon, on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You're listening to WVOX and Whitney Global Media Station, and we're here every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. asking the question, what happened here? And today's topic is being led by our special guest and co-host, Charles Knapp, former Assistant United States Attorney for the Eastern District, former Assistant Manhattan District Attorney, and also former Inspector General of Mount Vernon, bringing a lot of knowledge and insight to the situation in Mount Vernon, from taxes to the budget situation to the bridges, the Mount Vernon Animal Shelter. And we heard some analysis from Chris McDonough, who's a Mount Vernon resident taxpayer. He runs MountVernonCitizen.org, did a phenomenal analysis on the lies that were put out there by Mount Vernon's Mayor Sean Patterson Howard, who earned the title Heartless Howard for letting the animal shelter be overrun by rats. Now, we have the documents on one end from the state of New York that Chris McDonough influenced. Now, Vince, I think you're still on the line. We have documents. We don't know what's in those documents that were found in locations belonging to President Biden. This also raises questions about the documents that were with former President Trump. So, documents. What are we doing? What's the deal? How come this is a debacle? Vince? AR leader. What currently? Her name is Mary Young. She is the sister of former Mayor Clinton Young. Yes, for 1 year now. That's a great idea. Well, I will certainly invite her to talk about the new politics because I definitely believe in something called new pie politics, pie PI, and I'll do a special address on this because I think that we have to look at the pie and how we can keep getting to the next point along the decimal curve so that we can just keep solving problems but agree that the problem's not solved until we keep solving it. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, Vince. Charlie, you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's a call for transparency, and maybe the next candidate for mayor of Mount Vernon should highlight transparency and explain in the campaign how transparency is going to be expressed. And we'll have 4 years to, assuming they're elected, we'll have 4 years to live up to that idea or not. You rise and fall on your execution of your campaign promises, but certainly lack of transparency is killing the city.
And we have another caller. Caller, thank you for joining the line. Hey, John, how are you? Thanks for calling. Well, you're going to see me again running for mayor in Johnny's Pizzeria, and I'm doing tremendous. I'm holding on like a vice grip. That's right. Not going to let go. Tell us about it. I'm glad you asked that. I want to Yeah, I want to give you, I want to give you an actual personal response because I understand your frustration, but I also recognize their concern. So this past weekend in Mount Vernon, two of my nieces were violently assaulted at a nightclub in the city, and both of them had to go to the hospital. And but hold on, because Mount Vernon, at least the safety situation has deteriorated so much under this administration. Young people feel that they have to fend and fight for themselves, and in my opinion, they're fighting the wrong fight. They're not fighting the fight to necessarily advance the ideals of the next generation. They're just trying to survive. So when I see young people get caught up in the streets, doing things that they shouldn't do. Now, my nieces were just at a club celebrating a birthday. They're doing the right thing. It's just these people that want to do the wrong thing feel emboldened to intimidate, harass, and attack people. Specific to the anthem, you have these situations that flare up that often take things out of context sometimes, but sometimes we have to confront the problem. And that's where I think a lot of the leadership that was mentioned before, these people in power are not doing enough to engage the next generation, the youth, to explain, this is going to be their responsibility and they have to tune in to make it better, not allow it to neglect and fester like Sean Patterson Howard did to the Mount Vernon Animal Shelter. She let it rot and become rodent infested. So we have to exterminate and we have to engage, and I think we have to not give up on the audacity of the American dream. And once upon a time, government was in business to build big and do big things. We have to get back to that. And I think that's the real answer to get people to start standing up for America again. Yeah, John.
Yeah, if I could just jump in. It is, yeah, well, it's,
Charles Knapp. Talking to Charles Knapp.
former assistant U.S. attorney, former Manhattan assistant district attorney, and former and former inspector general for Mount Vernon. That's the job I did for free because the city council refused to put a budget line on for it, but it needed to be done. So let me just say something quickly because we're running out of time. In any group, you can always find people who are doing really well, just as you can always find people who are doing really poorly, and everyone else is kind of in the middle. I think with respect to the anthem issue, we need to keep two things in mind. One is the poor state of education. They don't even teach civics anymore. And haven't for decades. And I think that's really important to do. But the other thing to bear in mind is if you remember, a member of the U.S. national soccer team was asked at a press conference by an Iranian journalist how, as a black man, he could be in such a racist, apartheid like country and represent them. And what he said was, he acknowledged the truth that we do have a problem in the United States, but we address it. We may address it slowly, we may address it haltingly, but we address it, and over time, things improve, implicitly saying, as opposed to your country. But he was sufficiently diplomatic not to add that last part. So, yes, I find it unfortunate that people don't respect the national anthem. They have their reasons for it. Many, I think, are based on ignorance. That's an educational issue. And that's my little comment on that.
And that's what we're going to keep doing. We're going to keep hitting the nail on the head. John will hang back in the studio to talk it through with you. But everybody, we want to say thank you for joining us this week on What Happened Here. It's been an action-packed show. A lot of truth. Thanks to MountVernonCitizen.org, Chris McDonough for the analysis on the animal shelter. We'll see you next week. He's still